Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. The sparkling crystal chandelier pours down the luxury of a Manhattan night, reflecting the clothes and drinks in the ballroom. It's a gathering place for the city's celebrities. A charity dinner is underway, and Beltrán and his wife Florencia are certainly the center of attention. Beltrán, a business legend, has built a huge business empire with boldness and precision. Dressed in a well-tailored dark blue suit, he exudes poise and confidence in his demeanor. Florencia, who is snuggled up next to him, is as beautiful as a blooming rose in a dazzling red dress. However, underneath this seemingly perfect picture lies an imperceptible crack. Beltrán's gaze swept over Florencia's interaction with a man who was none other than Gaspar, his business partner of many years and his most trusted right-hand man. Florencia seemed to be particularly active tonight. She and Gaspar were talking more frequently than usual, with a touch of undisguised intimacy between their words, and there were even a couple of times when Florencia's laughter seemed a little too loud, as if she was deliberately trying to get someone's attention. And Gaspar's response was just as enthusiastic, and his gaze lingered on Florencia for longer than seemed appropriate for an ordinary friend. The subtle anomaly did not escape Beltrán. His eyes gradually became deep, like dark currents were quietly surging beneath a calm sea. A veteran of many years in the business world, Beltrán's insights into human nature have long been honed. He knew full well that behind any antics could lie secrets unknown to him. As the dinner drew to a close, the guests left one by one. Beltrán and Florencia returned by car to their mansion on the Upper East Side. Inside the carriage, the atmosphere was a little dull. Florencia looks out the window at the night scene whizzing by and seems to be lost in thought. "Did you have fun tonight?" Beltrán broke the silence, his tone calm, no emotion audible. Florencia turned her head and forced a smile. "Of course, dear. You know, I love occasions like this." "Gaspar seems to be enjoying himself as well," Beltrán said without moving. "Oh, Gaspar, he was always very social." Florencia's tone seemed a little careless, but Beltrán caught an imperceptible pause. When she got home, Florencia excused herself as a bit tired and went to her bedroom early. Beltrán went alone to his study and opened a bottle of treasured whiskey. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's bustling night scene, his thoughts racing. He needed time to clear his mind. He recalled some of Florencia's antics in recent times. She often came home late on the pretext of attending various events. Sometimes she gets cryptic texts on her cell phone, and she always deletes them quickly. Previously, Florencia never had a password on her cell phone, but now, she has added a complex layer of password protection. What's more, Beltrán can sense a subtle change in Florencia's attitude toward him. She's becoming increasingly detached and cold. These were details that might have escaped Beltrán's notice on a normal day, but tonight's dinner party was like a key that unlocked the Pandora's box of suspicion in his mind. He decided to stop fooling himself, and he was going to get to the bottom of it. The next day, Beltrán approached Itzel, a private investigator with an excellent reputation in the industry. She is known for her efficiency and discretion, and is particularly adept at handling cases involving privacy. Beltrán makes his suspicions known and commissions Itzel to investigate Florencia's whereabouts. "I need to know where she goes and who she sees every day, especially on Wednesday afternoons. She always says she goes to see those girlfriends of hers, but I suspect it's not that simple," Beltrán said, his voice low and firm. Itzel nodded. She understood the importance of the case. "I'll do my best to find out, Mr. Beltrán. I will keep you regularly informed of the progress of the investigation." For the next few weeks, Itzel stalked Florencia like a shadow. She discovered that Florencia left her home on time every Wednesday afternoon to go to the El Seno Hotel in the center of town. Known for its privacy and luxury, this hotel is a secret rendezvous spot for many celebrities. Itzel, through some means, got the records of Florencia's hotel stays, as well as some information provided by hotel insiders. She learned that Florencia would stay at the hotel for 3 to 4 hours at a time, always with the same man. What's more, Itzel discovers another cell phone that Florencia is hiding. This cell phone is specifically for contacting that man. Itzel got the call and text records of this cell phone through some special channels. The content of the text message made Beltrán's suspicions a complete reality. The explicit texts, the intimate terms of endearment, and the frequent contact all testify to the existence of an illicit relationship between Florencia and Gaspar. The conversation between them was teasing and suggestive, and they even agreed on a time and place for their next rendezvous. One of the texts read, "Honey, I can't wait to see you. El Seno, usual place, Wednesday at 3 p.m. Me too, baby. I'll surprise you." This was Gaspar's reply. Beltrán gripped the cell phone in his hand, so tightly that his knuckles were white from the exertion. It was as if his insides were torn apart, pain, anger, disappointment, all sorts of emotions intertwined. He used to think he had the perfect marriage, the perfect wife, but now it was all a great irony. And to add to his anger, the one who betrayed him was his most trusted friend and partner, Gaspar. He remembers that when Gaspar was down and out, he was the one who reached out to bring him into the company and step by step promoted him to become the company's vice president. Throughout the years, he has regarded Gaspar as a brother and has trusted and supported him unreservedly. Yet, Gaspar repays him in such a way that is simply more galling than any business rivalry. He slowly walks over to his desk and picks up a picture of him with Gaspar and Florencia that was taken during the company's 10th anniversary celebration. In the photo, all three are smiling and laughing at how close they were back then. And now, the photo was like a sharp knife, stabbing him hard in the heart. He threw the photo in the trash, as if to throw the false friendship away completely. Rather than opt for an immediate showdown in the face of betrayal, Beltrán begins to calmly contemplate a response. He knew that impulse would only make things worse. He needed a well-thought-out plan, one that would make the betrayer pay. A few days later, Beltrán asked Camilo to lunch. Camilo is not only Beltrán's personal attorney, but also his longtime friend. They met in college, and their friendship over the years has given them an extraordinary understanding of each other. In the restaurant, they chose a quiet corner to sit in. "How have you been, Beltrán?" Camilo asked with concern, noting that Beltrán's face was somewhat somber. Beltrán was silent for a moment, then told Camilo about Itzel's findings. "That's why I came to you today," he said, his voice low and husky. Camilo read the profiles carefully, his brow furrowed. "This is indeed serious, Beltrán. From a legal point of view, this evidence is sufficient to prove an illicit relationship between them." "I need more than that," Beltrán interrupted Camilo. "I'm going to make them pay, especially Gaspar." Camilo understood what Beltrán meant. He knew that for a man like Beltrán, betrayal was unforgivable. "What do you want to do?" "Gaspar has been in charge of the finances for the project in Singapore, and I suspect he's been tampering there." Beltrán stated his plan. "I want to start there and find evidence of his embezzlement." Camilo thought for a while and said, "This is indeed a breakthrough. If we can find evidence of his financial irregularities, we can not only sanction him within the company, we can even hold him legally responsible. Then it's settled." A cold glint flashed in Beltrán's eyes. "I'm going to make him lose everything, just like he did to me. I will assist you to the best of my ability, but remember, we need to gather evidence in a legal manner to avoid trouble later." Camilo concluded. "Don't worry, I'm measured. I'm not going to leave a leg up like they did," Beltrán replied, an inscrutable smile at the corner of his mouth. The seeds of vengeance have taken root in Beltrán's mind, and a well-planned storm is about to kick off. Once the lunch meeting with Camilo was over, Beltrán was quickly put to work on his revenge plan. He knew that this was a game that required not only careful planning, but also powerful allies. And the first ally to enlist is the company's CFO, Brisa. Brisa is a savvy and competent career woman who has been with the company for many years and knows the company's finances inside out. More importantly, Beltrán knows that Brisa has always had a grudge against Gaspar. Gaspar, relying on his seniority and position in the company, often dictates Brisa's work and even takes some of her credit. Beltrán is confident that Brisa will become his ally if he can provide a suitable opportunity. Beltrán then asked Brisa to his office under the pretext of discussing the company's financial situation. "Brisa, have a seat." Beltrán gestured to the chair across the desk, his tone calm. "How are the company's finances these days?" Brisa reported on some routine business and then asked cautiously, "Mr. Beltrán, do you have any special instructions for me today?" Beltrán smiled and said, I hear the Singapore project isn't going too well, is it? Brisa's eyes flashed with a strange look, and she hesitated, but answered truthfully, yes, Mr. Beltrán. That project is a bit complicated. Oh, how is it complicated? Beltrán pursued, a hint of inquiry in his tone. Gaspar is having some problems with some of the accounts. Over there. Brisa lowered her voice. I've questioned him about it, but he's not impressed. Beltrán's heart fluttered, and he knew that the opportunity had come. You suspect him of tampering there? Brisa nodded and shook her head again. I don't dare to be sure, but some places are really suspicious. For example, there are several large sums of money whose whereabouts are unknown, and there are also some procurement contracts whose prices are significantly higher than the market price. Do you have proof? Beltrán's eyes sharpened. Brisa hesitates for a moment, removes a document from the folder she carries, and hands it to Beltrán. Here's some information I've compiled privately for you to read. Beltrán took the file and flipped through it carefully. This document details Brisa's questions about the financial status of the Singapore project, as well as some of the prima facie evidence she has gathered. Although the evidence was not sufficient to fully prove Gaspar's embezzlement, it was enough to draw Beltrán's attention to it. Brisa, you're doing a great job. Beltrán closed the file and looked up at Brisa. This is very important, and I need your help. Brisa looked at Beltrán with some surprise. She hadn't expected Beltrán to value her opinion so highly. What do you want me to do? I need you to continue to follow up on the project in Singapore and gather more evidence about Gaspar's financial irregularities. Of course, I will guarantee your safety. And if you can help me solve this problem, I guarantee that your future in the company will be unlimited. Beltrán threw out the tantalizing offer. He knows that for an ambitious career woman like Brisa, advancement in position and power is far more attractive than money. There was a glint of excitement in Brisa's eyes. She certainly understood the weight of Beltrán's words. I understand, Mr. Beltrán. I will do my best to gather the evidence you need. Very well, remember, this must be kept secret. Beltrán admonished. Please don't worry, I won't say a word to anyone. Brisa assured. Having secured Brisa's cooperation, Beltrán's plan for revenge takes a big step forward. He set about arranging his next move. Meanwhile, new news has come in from Itzel. Her investigation of Gaspar's bank accounts and transaction records revealed a number of suspicious money movements. The funds traveled through multiple intermediary accounts and ended up in an offshore account located in the Cayman Islands. And the actual controller of this account is none other than Gaspar himself. This discovery reinforced Beltrán's judgment. He knew that Gaspar must be using the Singapore program to transfer company funds to his own personal account. Now, all he needs to do is gather more hard evidence and bring Gaspar's crimes to light once and for all. In order to get a better understanding of the reality of the project in Singapore, Beltrán decided to fly there himself. He arranged a visit to the Singapore branch in the name of inspecting the progress of the project. While in Singapore, Beltrán had several meetings with the local team to learn more about various aspects of the project. He found that the project was far more complex than he had imagined. Gaspar wields a great deal of power here, and almost all decisions are made by him alone. This greatly facilitates his underhandedness. During a meeting with local partners, Beltrán, offhandedly, mentioned some of the project's financial problems. He skillfully led the other party to name some of Gaspar's irregularities in the project, such as misrepresenting the purchase price and taking kickbacks. This information corroborates with the evidence provided by Brisa, giving Beltrán a clearer picture of Gaspar's guilt. Beltrán, on the other hand, is beginning to lay out his plans to expose Gaspar's true colors once and for all in the boardroom. He knew that this was a tough battle, and he had to be fully prepared. He stays in close contact with Camilo, discussing every step of the plan of action. Just then, exciting news came from Brisa's side. Her further investigation into the financial records of the Singapore project led to the discovery of an important document signed by Gaspar. This document proves that Gaspar authorized the transfer of a large sum of money to a company associated with him that was actually a shell company. Mr. Beltrán, I think this may be the key piece of evidence you're looking for. Brisa said over the phone, a hint of excitement in her voice. Excellent, Brisa. You'll scan the documents to me immediately, and I'll need to synchronize some arrangements on my end as well, Beltrán instructed decisively. However, just when Beltrán thinks he has everything under control, Brisa suddenly becomes unusually nervous. Mr. Beltrán, there is something I must confess to you, she stammered. What's wrong? A sense of foreboding welled up in Beltrán's mind. Some of the data I provided earlier, part of which I made a mistake in the statistics, I'm afraid it will affect the validity of the evidence. Brisa's voice was getting smaller and smaller, and it was clear that she felt very uneasy about admitting her mistake. Beltrán was silent for a moment, and instead of lashing out as Brisa had expected, he calmly asked, "Can it be remedied?" "I'm afraid is difficult." Those numbers were based on some assumptions at the time, and those assumptions don't seem to hold up now. There was frustration in Brisa's voice. Beltrán took a deep breath, knowing that now was not the time for accountability. "Brisa, you don't have to worry too much. You've already done enough. Leave the rest to me." He needed to reassess the current chain of evidence and make sure he could hit the ground running at the upcoming board meeting. Fortunately, in addition to the Brisa line, he has Itzel and other sources of information. Immediately after hanging up the phone, Beltrán contacted Itzel and asked in detail about the progress of the investigation regarding Gaspar's personal account. He paid particular attention to the details of the flow of those funds to the Cayman Islands and asked Itzel to ascertain all relevant information on that offshore account as soon as possible. "We need to make sure that every piece of evidence is conclusive and we can't give Gaspar any chance to refute it," Beltrán emphasized to Itzel. "Understood. I'll check it out as soon as possible. I should be able to get the account bank for that account and specific records of the money transactions in no time," Itzel responded, her voice still calm and professional. At the same time, Beltrán has begun to think about how to channel Adoración and make her suspicious of Gaspar. He knew that Adoración was a very shrewd woman and that her trust in Gaspar might not be easily shaken. But he must try, because Adoración holds another of Gaspar's soft spots: his family and social reputation. A few days later, a charity auction was held at a luxury hotel in Manhattan. Both Beltrán and Adoración were invited to attend. Between auctions, Beltrán approached Adoración with a glass of champagne. "Good evening, Adoración," Beltrán greeted with a smile. "Oh, Beltrán, it's so nice to meet you." Adoración responded, her smile elegant and proper. "How are the operations of the foundation going these days?" Beltrán asked in a seemingly casual manner. "Everything is fine, thank you for your concern," Adoración replied, but there seemed to be an imperceptible flash of doubt in her eyes. "I've heard some things about Gaspar's project in Singapore, some rumors about finances," Beltrán said. With a hint of innuendo in his tone, "I just wanted to remind you that as the head of the foundation, you might want to keep an eye on these things." Adoración's smile faltered slightly. She clearly hadn't expected Beltrán to bring up the subject out of the blue. "You mean, the mall is like a battlefield, and sometimes some imprudent financial maneuvering can have a negative impact on both the individual and the foundation." Beltrán nodded, confident that Adoración would understand what he meant. "Thank you for the reminder, Beltrán." Adoración's tone became a little more serious. "I'll take care of it." Beltrán's purpose had been accomplished, and instead of dwelling on the subject, he turned to other lighter matters of conversation. He knew that the seed of doubt had been planted, and all that was left to do was to wait for it to take root. He, on the other hand, needs to continue to refine his plan and wait for the perfect moment to strike a fatal blow to Gaspar. Beltrán's brief conversation with Adoración at the charity dinner was like dropping a stone in a calm lake, seemingly insignificant but enough to cause ripples. Adoración was outwardly immobile, but Beltrán's words still planted a thorn in her side. When she gets home, the more she thinks about it, the more uneasy she feels, especially when she associates it with some of Gaspar's recent antics, such as the fact that he's often out early and comes home late, and that he's become a bit perfunctory in his attitude toward her. Adoración decided to take action. She contacted a well-known independent auditor and asked them to conduct a full review of the foundation's accounts. She made a point of emphasizing to the auditor to focus on the financial transactions related to the projects for which Gaspar was responsible. Meanwhile, Beltrán continues to move forward with his plans. He knew it was only a matter of time before Adoracion made his move, and all he had to do was push the envelope in the process so that Gaspar's crimes would be exposed more quickly. He made another appointment with Itzel to inquire in detail about the progress of the investigation into Gaspar's offshore accounts. Itzel, that Cayman Islands account, anything new? Beltrán asked, a hint of urgency in his tone. We've identified the account holder for that account and the specific records of the funds that were transferred. Itzel handed Beltrán a file. As you might expect, this account is closely linked to Gaspar. Over the past year, there have been multiple large flows of funds from the Singapore program's account into this offshore account. Beltrán pored over the documents, and the records of the money movements corroborated the evidence Brisa had previously provided, forming a complete chain of evidence. Now, he has more than enough evidence that Gaspar used his position to transfer company funds to his own personal account. Very well, Itzel. You continue to follow up on this account. I want to make sure that every movement of funds is accounted for. Beltrán instructed. Understood. Itzel responded. In addition to continuing to gather evidence, Beltrán arranged a chance encounter with Gaspar. He knew that Gaspar was a very cautious man, and questioning him directly would only serve to alert him. He needed a more subtle way to get Gaspar to reveal himself. So it just so happened that Beltrán met Gaspar outside an industry conference. Oh, Gaspar, what a coincidence. Beltrán initiated the greeting, his tone relaxed and natural. Beltrán, you're here for this meeting too? Gaspar was a bit surprised, but quickly regained his composure. Yeah, come to get an update on what's going on in the industry. Beltrán smiled. Then the conversation turned. By the way, how's the project in Singapore coming along? I've heard it's a bit complicated over there. Gaspar's eyes flashed with an imperceptible flicker of panic, but he quickly hid it. Everything is under control, Beltrán. You know, there are always challenges with large projects. I certainly understand. Beltrán nodded, then asked, seemingly casually, I've heard that you've put a lot of effort into the project, even resorting to some unconventional financial maneuvers? Gaspar's face changed slightly, and he gave Beltrán a wary look. Who are you listening to? These are rumors. Rumors die hard, Gaspar. Beltrán said meaningfully. I just hope you'll be careful not to get yourself and the company into unnecessary trouble through a momentary lapse. With that said, Beltrán patted Gaspar on the shoulder and turned to leave. He knew that those words were enough to distract Gaspar. He wants to keep Gaspar in a constant state of tension and anxiety, allowing him to reveal more of himself. Over the next few days, Beltrán continued to release a number of tidbits of information about the financial problems of the Singapore project through various channels. The news is a mix of true and false, but all of it is enough to cause concern and speculation. He knew that the news would eventually reach Gaspar's ears and terrify him even more. At the same time, the auditor hired by Adoracion has begun a review of the Foundation's accounts. With Beltrán's covert assistance, the auditing agency soon discovered a number of suspicious movements of funds that pointed to projects under Gaspar's responsibility. Adoracion was shocked and outraged. She couldn't believe that her husband, whom she had always trusted, would do such a thing. She begins to secretly investigate Gaspar and gradually discovers more and more of his secrets. Brisa, on the other hand, regrouped after her initial panic. She realized that this was a very important test in her career. She began to move more cautiously, hoping to find some new evidence to fill in the gaps of her previous mistakes. She spent a great deal of time and energy scrutinizing every account, leaving no detail untouched. Finally, in her efforts, she found another important clue. She discovered that Gaspar had used a supplier with whom he was associated to purchase a shipment of equipment at a price several times higher than the market price. The equipment had no practical use at all and was clearly a sham transaction designed to siphon off company funds. Brisa immediately reported the discovery to Beltrán. Mr. Beltrán, I have found new evidence. There's absolutely no mistaking it this time, she said excitedly over the phone. Excellent, Brisa. You've done an excellent job. Beltrán appreciated. Send me the files. I need all the evidence that can be a threat to Gaspar now, the more the better. As more and more evidence surfaces, Gaspar finally feels a crisis like no other. He began to become agitated and even began to doubt those around him. He knew that he had to act quickly or there would be consequences. He reached out to his allies on the board to try to stop the situation from deteriorating further. He had even begun to consider whether he should voluntarily confess part of the truth to Beltrán in exchange for his forgiveness. However, unbeknownst to Gaspar, his every move is under Beltrán's watchful eye. Itzel was not only tracking his financial movements, but through some special means, he was also listening to his phone calls and emails. Mr. Beltrán, Gaspar has been very active lately. He seems to be trying to cover something up. Itzel reported to Beltrán. He has also contacted several board members in an attempt to enlist their support. I know, Beltrán said coldly. He's dying. Get it into the minds of the board members that they need to make the right choice. Meanwhile, Florencia begins to notice something unusual about Beltrán. She realizes that Beltrán has been leaving early and staying late a lot lately, and has become colder and colder towards her. She tries to communicate with Beltrán, but he is always evasive. Beltrán, what's wrong with you lately? Florencia finally couldn't help but ask, are you hiding something from me? What could I possibly have to hide from you? Beltrán asked rhetorically, a hint of sarcasm in his tone. I don't know, but you've been really off lately. Florencia said, are you suspecting me of something? Beltrán was silent for a moment, then looked up at Florencia. What do you think I should suspect you of? Florencia was a little weak at the look Beltrán was giving her, and she lowered her head, not daring to meet his eyes. I don't know. I just feel like you've been on me lately. Do you think I really don't know about you and Gaspar? Beltrán suddenly interrupted Florencia, his tone filled with anger and disappointment. Florencia's face instantly turned pale. She hadn't expected Beltrán to bring it up out of the blue. How do you? You know that? It doesn't matter how you knew. What matters is that you betrayed me. Beltrán's voice was cold without a trace of emotion. You and Gaspar, both will pay for your actions. Florencia's body begins to tremble as she realizes that her secret with Gaspar has been completely exposed by Beltrán. She tries to explain, tries to redeem herself, but Beltrán has stopped giving her any chances. As of today, you are no longer my wife and I will divorce you. As for Gaspar, he will take responsibility for his actions to the end. Beltrán announced coldly. He was fully prepared, and it was time to close the net. He informed Camilo that the board meeting could be called. Camilo, is everything ready? Beltrán asked over the phone. Yes, Beltrán. The board members have all been notified in place, and the meeting will be held tomorrow morning. Camilo replied. Very well, prepare them mentally for what will be a tough battle tomorrow. Beltrán said, determination in his tone. He knew that the climax of this revenge scheme was coming. At tomorrow's board meeting, he will thoroughly expose Gaspar and Florencia for what they are and make them pay dearly for their treachery. The board of directors meeting was held in the top-floor conference room of the company's headquarters building. It overlooked the entire bustling scene of Manhattan, but at the moment, the atmosphere in the conference room was oppressive and suffocating. The long, oval conference table was filled with members of the company's board of directors, each with an unusually serious expression. Beltrán sat at one end of the conference table, cool and glowering. Gaspar, on the other hand, was sitting across from him, his face pale and fine beads of sweat oozing from his forehead. I have called everyone here today to discuss a very serious matter. Beltrán's voice was low and strong, echoing in the conference room. This matter concerns not only the company's interests, but also its reputation and future. He paused for a moment, sweeping his gaze over everyone present before speaking slowly. I have recently discovered a serious financial irregularity within the company, and the person who started this is our vice president, Gaspar. The whole room was in an uproar at these words. The board members exchanged words and comments with expressions of shock and disbelief on their faces. Beltrán, what are you talking about? Gaspar snapped to his feet, shouting excitedly. You're making false accusations. I've worked diligently for the company for so many years, and you're doubting me? Whether it's a false accusation or not, you know best in your heart. Beltrán looked at Gaspar coldly. I have enough evidence here to prove that you used your position to embezzle the company's assets and transferred huge sums of money to your private overseas account. With that, Beltrán signaled Camillo to distribute the documents that had been prepared to each of the directors present. Included in these documents are details of Gaspar's offshore accounts provided by Itzel, evidence of financial irregularities in the Singapore project provided by Brisa, and suspicions about Gaspar in the Foundation's audit report provided by Adoracion. Each document, like a bombshell, exposes Gaspar's crimes to the sunlight little by little. The directors scrutinized the documents in their hands, their faces becoming more and more grave. They began to whisper and discuss the credibility of the evidence and how it might affect the company. Gaspar's face grows harder as he tries to defend himself, but his arguments pale in the face of this hard evidence. These are all forgeries. Someone deliberately set me up. He was still making a final struggle. That's enough, Gaspar. Leon, a senior board member, snapped. Do you still want to argue after all this? This evidence is more than enough to prove your guilt. Gaspar trailed off, knowing that he had lost his big moment. I propose that Gaspar be immediately relieved of all his duties in the company and that all his shares in the company be frozen. Leon continued, at the same time. I propose that the company immediately report him to the authorities and hold him legally responsible. Leon's proposal was supported by a majority of the directors. They agreed and began discussing how to deal with the power vacuum left by Gaspar and how to minimize the negative impact of this incident on the company. I object. Gaspar suddenly shouted, You can't do this to me. I've done a great job for the company. You can't just kick me out. Gaspar, you're wrong. Beltrán spoke slowly. Your so-called sweat equity was all based on betrayal and damage to the company. You have failed the company's trust in you and all the shareholders' expectations of you. Gaspar tried to say something else, but Beltrán didn't want to hear it anymore. Vote. Beltrán said to the board members. All those in favor of removing Gaspar and freezing his shares, raise your hands. Brush by brush, one arm was raised and the end result was not in doubt. Gaspar was deposed. Gaspar slumped in his chair, his eyes empty and his face ashen. He knew that he was completely finished. His career that he had worked so hard for years, his wealth, his status, his everything, all came to nothing at this moment. After the board meeting, Beltrán returned to his office alone. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city outside without a hint of victory in his heart. It was a revenge that he had won, but it had cost him dearly. His marriage to Florencia, his friendship with Gaspar, are irretrievably lost. At that moment, the office door was pushed open and Florencia walked in. Her eyes were red and swollen, obviously having just cried. Beltrán, do we really have to go this far? Florencia's voice was husky with a hint of pleading. Beltrán turned and looked at Florencia with disappointment and pain in his eyes. It wasn't me who got this far. It was you and Gaspar. Your betrayal ruined it all. I know I'm sorry, but I'm begging you, leave Gaspar alone. He was just confused. Florencia cried. A moment of confusion? He embezzled so much money from the company, and that's a moment of confusion? Beltrán said coldly. Florencia, you disappoint me so much. From the moment you betrayed me, we were over. No, Beltrán, you can't do this to me. Florencia cried out emotionally. I'm your wife, and we have so many wonderful memories. Have you forgotten them all? I haven't forgotten, but I will more than likely not forget the hurt you have caused me. Beltrán's voice was icy cold without a trace of emotion. I will divorce you, and you will no longer own any of the Lee family's property. As for Gaspar, he must be held legally responsible for his actions. Florencia is completely devastated. She sits on the floor and cries out in disbelief. She knew that there was nothing more she could do to change her fate or Gaspar's. A few days later, Gaspar was taken away by the police for further investigation. He will face a number of criminal charges, including embezzlement, misappropriation of public funds, and money laundering. If convicted, he faces up to decades in prison. And Florencia, too, has lost everything she once had. She moves out of Lee's mansion, losing her upper-class social circle and the luxurious life she was once so proud of. Her affair scandal with Gaspar became the talk of Manhattan's high society after dinner and a cautionary tale about the price of betrayal. After dealing with Gaspar and Florencia, Beltrán changed the company's name to Beltrán International, marking a new era for the company. Under Beltrán's leadership, the company quickly emerged from the shadow of the Gaspar incident and continues to grow strongly. And Adoración, after the storm, has become more mature and stronger. The auditor she hired ultimately confirmed that the foundation's books were clean except for the programs Gaspar was in charge of. With Beltrán's covert help, she succeeded in removing Gaspar from the foundation and salvaging its reputation. Shortly afterward, she met federal judge Xavier and the two fell in love and eventually entered into marriage. Adoración has finally achieved happiness of his own. The dust seems to have settled, but the effects of this storm are far from over. It has changed the destiny of many people and has given people a deeper understanding of human nature, of desire, and of betrayal. 5 years is enough time to turn Manhattan's skyline upside down and shift the trajectory of people's lives dramatically. Gaspar's case was finally sentenced, and he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for multiple convictions. As a result of his mental breakdown in prison, he was transferred to a specialized psychiatric ward for treatment. There, he spent the whole day crazy, sometimes mumbling, sometimes letting out a cry, and had long since lost the look of the spirited vice president of that year. He kept repeating his name and some slurred words, as if he were still trying to grasp at the glory of those who had passed away, but it had all been in vain. His name has become the antithesis of the business world, a symbol that warns of greed and betrayal. Florencia's life has also been turned upside down.
Her divorce proceedings with Beltrán were entangled for 2 years, and in the end, she was awarded only a very small portion of her property, which was never enough to sustain her former luxurious life. She sold her former mansion and moved to a small town in Connecticut to try to start a new life there. But she soon realized that she simply can't adapt to the humdrum and straitened circumstances. She tried to get a job, but her name had long been infamous and no one would hire her. Her so-called friends also shunned her. All she could do was drink every day and spend the rest of her life in remorse and despair. From time to time, she thinks back to the luxurious life she once had, to the glamorous days, but it's all in the past, like a far-fetched dream. Adoración and Xavier are happily married. Xavier, an honest and principled federal judge, pampered Adoración and showed full understanding and respect for her past. With Xavier's support, Adoración's foundation is running better and better, and she is gradually emerging from the shadow of the Gaspar incident. She devotes more time and energy to charitable causes and has helped many people in need. Her kindness and strength have earned her more and more respect and praise. She proved through her actions that even when she hit a low point in her life, she could still get back up and live her wonderful self. Beltrán, on the other hand, has led his business empire, Beltrán International, to new heights. He has expanded the company's business across the globe and has achieved impressive results in a number of areas. He has earned recognition in the industry for his outstanding leadership and forward-looking strategic vision. He became a legend in the business world, and his story has been told by countless people, inspiring many more to pursue their dreams. 5 years later, on a fall afternoon, Beltrán stands in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office in Manhattan, overlooking the bustling city. His gaze was deep and calm, as if he could see into the world. His assistant Mateo walked in and said softly, "Mr. Beltrán, you have a visitor." "Who is it?" Beltrán asked, who rarely received private visitors during working hours. "It's a lady named Aitana. She says it's Gaspar's sister." Mateo replied. Beltrán's brow furrowed slightly. He hadn't expected Gaspar's family to come to him. "Invite her in," he said. Aitana walks into the office, her look haggard, her eyes full of fatigue and sadness. She looks somewhat similar to Gaspar, but her temperament is completely different. "Hello, Mr. Beltrán." Aitana's voice trembled a little. "I know you're busy, but I wanted to come and see you anyway." "Please sit, Ms. Aitana." Beltrán gestured for her to take a seat on the couch opposite, Did you come to see me about Gaspar? Yes. Aitana nodded. I know that my brother has made auge mistake and has wronged you and the company. But I still want to ask you, can you help him? How do you want me to help him? Beltrán asked, his tone calm. I heard that he was in a bad situation in the mental hospital and he thought I wanted to take him home so he could get better treatment. Aitana said. But I don't have enough money and no one is willing to help me. I know that you are the only person left who might be able to help him. Beltrán was silent for a moment as he looked at Aitana, a wave of mixed emotions welling up in him. He remembers Gaspar's past betrayal and the hate caused, but he also sees the sincerity and helplessness in Aitana's eyes. I can help. Beltrán finally said, I ran to have him transferred to a better hospital and cover the cost of his treatment. A flash of surprise and gratitude flashed in Aitana's eyes. Thank you, Mr. Beltrán. I can't thank you enough for your great kindness. You don't have to thank me. Beltrán said lightly, I just did what I had to do. I wish she a speedy recovery. After Aitana leaves, Beltrán walks over to the window again and looks out. In his heart, there was no thrill of vengeance or joy of victory, only a faint disappointment. This revenge, he won, but what he won was not just a business empire, but a deep understanding of human nature. He learned that betrayal and greed, in the end, would only lead to destruction, while forgiveness and kindness were the true power. He pulls out an old photo of him and Florencia at their wedding. They are smiling so brightly and happily in the photo. He stared at the photo for a long time before placing it in a drawer, as if to dust off the memory forever. 5 years have passed, and the wounds from this storm are gradually being healed by time. But it leaves a mark that is forever etched in every honest heart. It is like a mirror that reflects the light and darkness of human nature, and warns people to always hold fast to their moral bottom line and not to be consumed by desire. Because the path of life is full of temptations and challenges, and only those who can hold fast to their hearts can ultimately walk farther and more steadily. And those who betray will eventually pay the price for their behavior, even if they escape the law, they cannot escape the judgment of their conscience.
That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.